Yeah, so I suppose my own name is Ray Ryan, and I'm from the Brexit unit in Customs Division within Revenue. So over the last number of years, we've been doing trader engagement with lots of different bodies, lots of different, from large organizations down to smaller companies. I suppose this one is slightly different in that there will be some commercial aspects, but there'll also be individuals. So I'll try to cover both aspects of it. There is a lot of information in the slides, and some of the, from talking to Gail and some of the examples she gave me, I tried to put as much as possible into the presentation slides, and I'll hopefully cover off as much detail as possible. But if you do have general queries, you can send them into brexitqueries@revenue.ie, or even the one that Gail is mentioning. If you do have very specific questions or very personal details, obviously not for this platform, you can send them in there, and we'll be able to direct them within Revenue. And there's a lot of information on the Brexit page as well in relation to some of the requirements. So just in terms of Brexit, Brexit is almost an old term at this stage. We're almost 4 months into it, over 4.5 months into it. So the UK actually left in January 2020, but the transition period didn't end until 31st of December 2020. So it basically means that the UK is a third country for customs purposes, and that has a number of impacts and a number of different aspects to bear in mind. It does exclude Northern Ireland, so a lot of what I talk about will be relating to Great Britain rather than the whole of the UK. So Northern Ireland is excluded for customs purposes. What it does mean is that customs formalities apply. So any goods, all types of goods, any goods that are moving between GB and Ireland or through GB require customs formalities to be completed. So there's customs declarations linked to them, and then there's obviously possible interventions, both from a revenue point of view and other agencies. And some of those other agencies will be Department of Agriculture, HSE, so food products, that type of thing. I won't go into too much detail on those on this session this evening, but if there is questions, I'm happy to take them afterwards in relation to some of those products. So just in terms of the presentation, I'll go through the different formalities very briefly, and then I'll go into maybe more precise details from Irish Sailing point of view. So I'll go through the imports, exports, and some transit through GB and just the requirements around it. So imports, if you're bringing goods in from GB since the 1st of January, you're required to do an import declaration, and this is submitted to AIS. So every good that moves needs an import declaration linked to it, and it's submitted to revenue systems. It needs to be done in advance of departure from the UK. So again, it's an awareness around what steps are required, how to do it, who's going to do it, and do you have an agent or need an agent to do it on your behalf. There's also another declaration required, which is called an entry summary declaration, and that's submitted to a separate system, and that's in terms of safety and security data, but it's another declaration that does need to be done in advance of the departure from GB. So there's 2 declarations required, 2 sets of data required. So again, it's a lot more than anyone was used to from moving goods between GB and Ireland. So it's the requirements that are in place, and they need to be done. If you're moving goods on the Ro-Ro ferry services, there's an additional requirement then that you need to complete a pre-boarding notification. So if you're using those ferry services, you need to have that import declaration, that entry summary declaration, and they create a reference number. And those 2 reference numbers need to be added to the pre-boarding notification. You actually will not be allowed board the ferry services in the UK without having a pre-boarding notification completed. So again, it's an awareness around that. In particular, maybe if you're moving goods yourself as an individual, you need to know how to do those declarations, who's going to submit those declarations on your behalf. You may be booked in as a commercial on the ferry services and need that pre-boarding notification. So it's ensuring you have all the steps taken, or you won't be allowed board the ferry service itself. So it is important to know what the requirements are if you are moving stuff on the Ro-Ro ferry services, or if you're moving stuff on the company then and it's coming in, what steps need to be taken, who's doing them on your behalf, and who's completing them. All those declarations then may be subject to intervention and license requirements. So I think Gail mentioned guns there. Obviously, there'll be requirements around that and restrictions on some of those products, but lots of different products have rules around them and certain license requirements, even in terms of chemicals or obviously food products. I mentioned Department of Agriculture. If you're bringing in food, there's certain restrictions on food products now that wouldn't have been in place last year. So again, it's awareness around what you can bring and can't bring, and the requirements around if you need to do declarations and documents presented to different agencies in advance. The other aspect of it then is the considerations for payments and duties and VAT. So customs duties do apply on customs declarations, and VAT at the point of importation does apply too. They're all linked back to the commodity code. So a commodity code is a particular code, a 10-digit code that's required in import declarations, and there's a commodity code for every product. So there's thousands of products, thousands of commodity codes that can be added onto a customs declaration, and the duty rates are linked to that. There is preferential duty under the EU-UK trade and cooperation agreement of 0% if the goods are of UK origin, and I'll touch on that later just in terms of how to claim that preferential duty. In terms of VAT and VAT at the point of importation, VAT is normally paid at the point of importation too. If you're a VAT registered business, you can avail of postponed accounting. And postponed accounting allows you to postpone that VAT payment and account for it in your normal VAT returns, in your bi-monthly returns. So again, it's an awareness around that, but it does need to be claimed on each customs declaration. So ensuring that it is claimed, or you will be subject to VAT at the point of importation. So just ensuring that if you are purchasing something, if you are bringing something over and have purchased it, there may be customs duty and VAT that will be charged in addition to what you've already paid. Just moving into exports then, again, this is sending goods to GB. It does require a customs declaration. This is actually just one customs declaration. So in the previous example, there was two. There was a safety and security element and the customs declaration. It's actually combined for exports. So it's submitted to the AAP system. Again, that's a separate system for the exports. It may be subject to intervention or license requirements. Some of the examples, again, will be those chemicals. And again, if it's on the Ro-Ro ferry services, so if you're moving goods over or if the goods are being exported on the Ro-Ro ferry service, the pre-boarding notification needs that reference number included in it to allow the goods board the ferry. Another aspect to remember if you are exporting goods is ensuring that you know who's completing the import formalities in the third country. So in this case, in GB, so to get it from Ireland to the final destination point in the UK, who's going to complete the full process? Is it part of your terms and conditions? Is it part of your sales contract? Maybe you've been engaging or trading with someone for numerous years and never had anything formal. You probably need to look at that and reassess it, ensure that it's very clear exactly who's responsible for what steps, even in terms of paying any import duties in GB, who's taking responsibility for those and the VAT. So again, it's an awareness around that. I'll just very briefly mention transit. So this is moving goods from an EU member state through GB and into Ireland. Again, it requires a customs declaration. We've some examples coming from Sweden or obviously from mainland Europe that are going through the UK into Ireland, but it does require a customs declaration, and it's called a transit declaration, again, to a separate system. It does require access to financial guarantees to submit this declaration. So again, it's ensuring that if you don't have access to, or if you don't have a financial guarantee, you need to get an agent that has access to this financial guarantee to create that declaration. Again, they may be subject to intervention, but usually it's EU goods moving to an EU country, so there will be reduced levels of intervention on those. Again, just a reminder, obviously, if it's through the land bridge, it's going to be using that Ro-Ro ferry service, so it will require that pre-boarding notification, the PBN. So for exports, that safety and security may be included in the transit. If not, there's an additional requirement for an exit summary declaration and EXS. And then for import, that ENS, which is the entry summary declaration, is required. So again, it's ensuring you know all the steps that are required to move goods through the UK as well. So just to give you some idea, I suppose, in terms of the learnings or what we've learned since the 1st of January from, I suppose, the activity that has happened, we're encountering issues in relation to incorrect data in those import declarations or the entry summary declarations, which does lead to issues and delays. So it's important that if you are importing goods that, one, you know the data that's required, two, that if you're doing the declaration or someone's doing it on your behalf, the data is input correctly. And again, that could be down to the commodity code. If an incorrect commodity code is entered, it could lead to unexpected charges. So again, ensuring that you have the correct commodity code, the correct details on the declaration to avoid any unforeseen issues. In relation to documentation sent to relevant agencies in advance, a lot of this is in relation to the Department of Agriculture and the HSE, but in terms of something I'll touch on in a while is in relation to documentation that may be required to prove in terms of the vessels, VAT ownership, the documents that will be required on board a vessel. Have those prepared, know what you need, ensure you know what needs to be done. So again, linking back to commodity codes for the products, but in terms of vessels, do you know the documentation that needs to be on board? If you're sailing to or from the UK, what's required now that may have not been required previously? And again, be aware of it. And the out of office hours requests is in terms of documentation. Revenue is operating 24/7 at the ports and airports, so are the other agencies. Goods are moving 24/7. So if there's certain documents that are required linked back to a product you're importing, can you get it to the agent, or else potentially there could be a truck and a truck driver waiting until those documents are produced. Other kind of learnings and important things to note in terms of insufficient funds, and I'll touch on again when I talk about origin, and I mentioned it in terms of the duty rates and the VAT, that because the deal, I suppose, that the trade and cooperation agreement was signed so late in the year, late in 2020, that there was an expectation that because the agreement is in place, there will be no duty charges. But that is not the case. You actually need to claim a preferential duty rate if the goods are of UK origin. And this wasn't entered on declarations, which led to charges, which were unexpected, which led to insufficient funds, and the declarations couldn't be processed until the revenue accounts were topped up. So it's ensuring that if you are importing goods, that if you're the payer, that the funds are in place. If an agent is paying on your behalf, you're aware of what charges may apply from that agent to you. Just another aspect is in terms of a lot of people consider moving goods is for commercial purposes, but it's all types of goods. So if you're bringing goods in, if someone's coming over here to repair something maybe on a vessel, they actually need to do a declaration for any equipment or tools that they're bringing in from GB to complete those repairs. So again, it's an awareness around all kind of goods need declarations linked to them, and ensuring that you have the relevant steps taken. The postponed accounting there, I mentioned it earlier, if you're an Irish VAT registered business, you can actually avail of postponed accounting. It needs to be claimed on each customs declaration, and then obviously a return done on your normal bi-monthly returns. There's e-customs notifications I've linked out there. I'll send Gail a link to the full list of them afterwards, and she can share them with the people that are signed up if she wants. But they're useful guidance notes on that, and they go into a lot more detail than obviously I can cover tonight. And just in terms of another issue that came up was goods moving via Northern Ireland. There's certain requirements there, obviously inbound or outbound. You need to do certain aspects in terms of your customs declarations and completing them correctly. So just to touch on the origin and some related issues. So under that trade and cooperation agreement between the EU and the UK, you can avail of preference for zero tariffs when you're importing goods of UK origin. And again, it's important to note that you need proof of that UK origin, and then you need an actual statement of origin to claim that preferential duty. It's not just a case of assuming it has UK origin if it's coming from GB. You need to have the relevant proofs to back it up. And there's more detail in relation to claiming that preferential duty on the e-customs notification again. It's important to know that it needs to be claimed on each customs declaration. So if you have GB and UK origin down, you actually need to claim a particular code on the customs declaration to avail of that preferential duty rate. So it's important, and again, it can impact if you're bringing goods in on a regular basis, or even high value goods, and there's a customs duty linked to it that can be that you can avail of preferential duty rather than having to go and correct the declaration afterwards. There's a lot of issues, I suppose, come up in terms of goods that are not of UK origin. So obviously the UK GB is a hub as such for other products that come into Ireland. So they can be of EU or other third country origin. They can't actually avail of any preferential duty rates. So you could have EU goods that will be subject to charges and customs duties. So again, it's an awareness of what the commodity code of the product is, what the customs duty linked to it is, and where the actual goods originate from. There's aspects that you can consider in terms of goods going to customs warehousing in GB, which suspends any duties there and then can be brought into Ireland for duties to be paid. If they're EU goods, you can move them under a transit declaration, which I covered earlier, and they can stay in the UK under a temporary storage facility, which again suspends the duty and it doesn't lose that EU status, which is key to maintaining the EU status, so you don't encounter charges on EU goods. And then there's an option for a return goods relief. So if EU goods are exported from the EU, you can claim a return goods relief if they're re-imported within 3 years. So again, there's a number of steps required around that, and a number of documentations linked to those, and I can touch on it in more detail later if you want. There is a guidance note in relation to those goods, and again, it goes into a lot more detail and gives some scenarios around how you can avail of that return goods relief and some of the other aspects of warehousing and transit. So just, I suppose, going into more detail in terms of specifics for Irish sailing and some of the key points to note. There was a lot of information in the last few slides. It's a lot of information to take in, but the important things to note are if you are moving anything between Ireland and GB or GB and Ireland, that there is customs formalities behind it, and you need to know who's completing them and if they're completed correctly and who's doing it on your behalf, and just ensuring that you do it. So if you're buying goods from GB, again, it's a reminder that there's actually export formalities required in GB. So on HMRC systems, you need to know who's responsible for those, is the suppliers completing those, and again, the import formalities in Ireland. So a lot of sales, I suppose, pre-Brexit as such, even last year, would have been sales door to door. So a UK supplier would deliver the goods to your door, and it may not have been a formal contract, but under the customs declarations, there is Incoterms. So a delivered duty paid would be a term that would be linked to some of the sales contracts. And that means that the supplier in the UK would actually be responsible for all export formalities in GB, all import formalities in Ireland, including the payment of duties and VAT. So again, it's important, if you're unsure, to ask the questions in any aspects. If you're moving goods now, don't assume anything, ensure you have clarity on who's responsible. Again, that's linked back to who's responsible for the import declarations in Ireland, who's completing them, and then if you are obviously responsible for any duties or VAT and any returns that you may need to complete in relation to that. So it's ensuring that you know that what previously might have been in place may not necessarily carry forward, and more than likely will not carry forward into doing transactions in 2021 or onwards. So I just put up an example there of a duty rate that applies. So Chapter 89 of TARIC. The TARIC is the EU database that outlines all the kind of commodity codes and the duty rates. So if you went into your internet search engine and put in TARIC, you'll find a link to it there. And Chapter 89 actually outlines vessels and yachts and boats. So obviously for Irish sailing, there's a lot of products in there that will be linked. So I just gave the example of the canoe there. So it's commodity code 8903-9910. That's actually 8 digits. You need to add 2 zeros onto that for the full code for the import declaration. So it's a 10-digit code, so it'll be 2 zeros at the end of that. The duty rate for that canoe is 2.7% customs duty. So again, if you're bringing in that and it's not of UK origin, so let's say it's a French canoe that's in the UK and it's distributed from the UK, 2% duty rate would apply, 2.7%, sorry, duty rate would apply. And again, it's the cost, insurance and freight. The customs duty is charged on top of that, and then cost, insurance, freight plus the customs duty, and the VAT is charged on top of that. So again, it's an awareness around how the calculations are done. And there is a useful link on revenue.ie in relation, if you actually went to the online shopping page, there's a few examples of how that duty rate is calculated, and it gives you an idea of how it can build up. And then if it's of UK origin, you can actually claim that 0% duty rate by using that preferential claim. And again, you need that statement of origin from the supplier to outline its requirements and meeting the requirements of UK origin. And again, a reminder that the standard VAT rate applies to certain products, which would be 23% at the current point in time. If you're selling to the UK, then selling to GB, again, it's that sales contract really, who's responsible for completing the export formalities. Sorry, that should be in Ireland, and the import formalities in the UK. I didn't switch that around, apologies. But it's an awareness of who's completing the declarations in Ireland and declarations in the UK, and again, who's responsible for payment of customs duties and VAT in the UK. Again, that could come down to your sales contract and ensuring that it's clear that you know who's responsible for each step in the process. Again, it could be a haulier or a logistics company or a courier company, but it's just ensuring that you're clear who's taking responsibility for each. Do you need to provide data to anyone who needs the declaration details, any invoice details, and so forth? And again, the final point there is that you actually need to be registered for VAT in the UK. If you're supplying any goods into the UK, there's a requirement to register for VAT in the UK now. So it's ensuring that you're aware of that and that you've taken the steps if you're starting to trade over the coming weeks or months. Another aspect, I suppose, that Gail asked me to cover is in relation to if you're traveling for events. So obviously, or hopefully, in the next few weeks and months, events will become more open and we'll be free to move throughout the EU and obviously into the UK as well. So we'll see a lot more traveling and events will open up again. And again, it's an awareness now that goods are moving between Ireland and GB. You actually need to ensure that you have the customs formalities met. So again, there's options. You can use an ATA carnet, which is a paper document that needs to get stamped at the point of export and the point of import, and again on return journeys, or the customs declaration. So those customs declarations I mentioned in terms of export declarations, and then the import declarations into the UK. So it's ensuring you know which steps you need to take, which makes sense from your own point of view. There's costs and requirements and kind of different aspects to consider when you're doing this. So for evidence, you need to provide obviously written confirmation from race organizers. So again, if you're traveling on your own, by your own means, so if your own vessel is going over, it's a bit more straightforward in terms of that there's less formal requirements. You don't need to do customs declarations into systems from an Irish point of view. You need to check with HMRC what the requirement is there will be. But again, if it's going over the ferry services or it's being transported unaccompanied, there is customs declarations linked to them and how you need to do those. And again, it's a reminder who's completing those formalities. Do you need an agent to complete them on your behalf? Do you need to contact the Dublin Chamber of Commerce in terms of that ATA carnet scheme? Again, it's an awareness around those. And if you're not using the ATA carnet scheme, what reliefs or procedure codes are required to suspend any payment of duties if you're going into GB? So again, that's for HMRC to confirm which. what you need to do on the HMRC site to ensure that you're not subject to any payment of duties or VAT when you're going over for an event or on a temporary basis. Just in terms of attending an event in Ireland, then again, it's that same question: how are the goods travelling? Are they travelling on an ATA carnet? Are they travelling in customs declarations? Again, it's that link there. It's a detailed link, or it's not a shortcut as such, but there is information on the revenue website in terms of if you're accompanied, so personal effects or for sport purposes, they're normally emitted without formality. So again, it's an awareness around what steps you need to take, ensuring that you know it and you're not surprised at the point of importation if you're stopped by any customs officer, or if you're stopped in Ireland or en route to Ireland in terms of what you require and what documentations you need to prove that it is travelling for an event or a temporary measure. So again, if it is a formal, if it's unaccompanied and the goods are coming in, or if they're coming in by the ferry services with products which for the event, what customs declarations are linked to those products, and ensuring that you meet all the requirements. So just in terms of sailing for leisure then, again, it's an awareness of the requirements from a revenue point of view, which obviously I'm covering, and then also from a GB point of view, which HMRC have some information on the website. I think I have a link, or I don't actually have it on this page. There is links on the HMRC website too, and I'm sure Irish Sailing have access to them as well on their Brexit page. So again, if you are sailing for leisure, there's no revenue customs formalities at importation or export. So it's basically the act of actually moving into Ireland counts as a temporary admission declaration as such, but you do need to have documentation available for checking if there is a request for it. So again, the documentation could be registration details, which are normally on the vessel anyway, so who owns the boat. If it's for hire, the evidence of that, the requirements and documentations around that. If it's coming in for a temporary basis, do you have details of the moorings booked in Ireland? Do you have details of hotels or accommodation booked in Ireland? Those types of steps. And I think it's a similar enough process going into GB again, but ensuring that you do check the requirements from a HMRC point of view before you travel. So again, do this all before you travel, so you're not surprised en route or at the point of arrival in GB or in Ireland. So it's ensuring that you are aware of those steps. I've referenced there to the reporting in terms of the inwards and outwards of vessels and the regulations that apply. And again, it's an awareness that GB is no longer part of the European Union. So it is a third country, and it's subject to prohibitions and restrictions if you're moving goods that you may not have had any issues with before. It's ensuring that you're aware of what those are. Again, it goes back to commodity codes. It's ensuring that you're aware that when you're returning from GB, that personal allowances come into play. It's the same as going through the channel in an airport as such. So again, it's an awareness around what's on board, who's traveling with it, where it was, and I suppose a key point in terms of when the vessel is moving and coming back into Ireland in particular is that the Vat status of the vessel. So ensuring that you're aware of what that Vat status is. Does it have an EU Vat status? So again, ensuring that you're aware of it. If you're unsure, I have contact details at the end that you can follow up with. But it is just, do think about it before you do any movements. Ensure that you have all the steps taken. If in doubt, contact Revenue or contact HMRC to ensure that there's not something you're missing, or that there's not something obvious that you should be doing that you have just missed. So again, ensuring that you've taken the steps. Another reminder in terms of ship stores, then obviously if you're traveling into Ireland for a particular period, there's limits and requirements around the ship stores, and ensuring that you have those steps taken. And going into the UK, obviously will be the same, and just check the requirements from a HMRC point of view. It probably will be similar for now, but it may change over time. And again, it's ensuring that you keep up to speed in those changes, what may apply going into the UK, and obviously from a revenue point of view, if there's any changes there. But those ship stores, so again, that evidence, what's on board prior to departure, and again, if you're returning, then ensuring that you're aware of it. Bringing boats in for temporary admission too, it's that link that is there. So it's the importing vehicles duty-free allowances. So it's that relief from customs duties and VAT. It's basically under a temporary admission point of view. So you can bring it in for 18 months, but it's ensuring that you have it done, that you have the relevant steps, that you have all the documentation, that you have all the relevant proofs, and going again back to as much detail as possible that you can have. And the final point there is in relation to the HMRC have notices on it. I don't have the link on the page, probably because I ran out of space actually on the page. Apologies. Again, just in terms of that new means of transport, so it's a reminder that if you do purchase a vessel which is a new means of transport from an EU member state, it will be subject to Irish VAT. You may need to reclaim any VAT paid in the other EU member state. And then the other piece is that GB, if you're buying a boat from GB or a vessel from GB, it is a third country, and customs duties and VAT may be applicable and chargeable. So again, it's ensuring that you know before you purchase something what charges may apply, and that you're not surprised if charges do. And again, it's back to that commodity code, which is key to it. Some of the vessels I looked up do have a 0% duty rate. Some of them do have a customs duty rate of, well, I mean, 2.7% was one of them there. But again, if it's not of UK origin, you can't avail a preferential duty claim. So ensuring that you know where the vessel is actually originating from. If it's not in the UK, you can't avail of that, and ensuring that you're aware of what charges may apply. So ensuring that you're aware of those, and it applies, customs duty and VAT applies to the purchase of a new and a second-hand vessel. So it is awareness around that. There's a number of contact points up here. I mentioned the Brexit queries already. So if there's any general queries, or if you're not unsure of who to contact in any questions are linked to Brexit, I suppose you can contact my unit, and we'll direct them within revenue to the relevant areas if we can't answer ourselves. In terms of those temporary admissions or any reliefs that are referenced there, in terms of the reliefs for sporting goods accompanied, or the 8A carnets, you can contact customs reliefs at revenue.ie, and they'll give you more information. There is information on the website, and I can send some links afterwards if you think they'll be useful. If you're in doubt around the VAT compliance or what status your vessel is in, you can contact Maritime at revenue.ie just to validate, and they'll confirm what you do require, what evidence you would require. Again, it may not have been an issue up until the end of 2020, or even now that you're only considering with COVID and restrictions, that people are only starting to kind of consider sailing again and moving between Ireland and GB and the requirements around it. So, and obviously the fact that the UK or GB is no longer part of the EU and the implications that has in terms of VAT compliance. And then in terms of ship stores, if you have any questions in relation to particular around ship stores, there's a contact email address there. The other queries or the other details then are related to the systems, I suppose, in doing customs declarations. So that entry summary declaration, if you have any issues in relation to that. Systems queries themselves. So if you're submitting a declaration and you have issues, there's an e-customs or that contact number, and then the pre-boarding notification if you have any issues, and then the actual national helpline. So that's if your goods are in transit or moving, or if questions around coming into a port or an airport, you can ring that helpline and it's available 24/7. So that's a very quick overview in relation to some of the requirements. I hope that was clear. And it's just even the realization that you're falling into, I suppose, sailing was always kind of, I suppose you would have been engaged with customs and the cutter and the maritime side of things, but now it's in terms of the customs declarations and the requirements around that and awareness what you need to do. So treating sailing to GB is almost the same as sailing to the USA now, but it's pretty much from a customs documentation point of view.
Yeah, absolutely, Ray. It is definitely a mindset now, and it's just so hard to take on board because we go over obviously to GB for so many different purchases and holidays, and of course the events. They're quite a big thing. I can see some hands going up, and I also have some questions that have come into the chat. So I'll read those questions out, and then we'll go to the hands. Is that okay, Jim O'Connell? I can see your hand is up there, so we'll just go through the chat first. I'm going to scroll back, bear with me. All right, so I have a question here that someone has asked. Would it be possible to ask the gentleman there? That's nice, isn't it, Ray? Would it be hard to ask the gentleman from Revenue, what is the situation about buying a second-hand boat in France and importing it to Ireland, where the boat was registered and flagged in the UK? Does the flag matter? Can he just bring it home?
The flag doesn't matter as in terms of the customs declarations. Once it's coming directly from France to Ireland, I presume being sailed, that there is no customs requirements. It's moving directly, so there's no customs declarations. But the registration then, you may just need to confirm what the requirements around the flag are. It's just not. I won't be an expert on that.
Okay, so that's really good news for that gentleman. So he can go buy his boat in France and sail her home. And now if he needs,
and again, it's going back to that VAT status, ensuring that the VAT status is correct on it, I suppose, and having the evidence of the VAT paid.
Yeah, so if he is stopped
as an EU member state.
Yeah, so he needs to make sure he has proof of ownership and when it was purchased.
Yeah, exactly. The sales invoices and so forth, because obviously using the UK flag, it may lead to queries coming.
Yeah,
clarify it. Same as it's consider it as if you were driving around with a yellow edge car almost. That there is it's an easy identifier for a question.
Particularly at the moment, I think when any of us see a yellow red car right now, we'll have a quick look, see where they've come from. So thanks very much. I hope that's answered your question. So now I have another one here. 1 second. Importing a second-hand boat from France, any issues? So I think we've answered that one. That question has been answered. Suzanne, are you happy with the answer there? Can't see you if you're doing a thumbs up, so I'll I just saw a thumb come up there. Thanks very much, Suzanne. That's lovely. Someone has said lots of intro. Thank you very much. Here's a question for you as well. I have a 30-foot sailboat, leisure sailing only, which was manufactured in Finland before being imported into Norway. I am British, but permanently resident in Norway. What formalities do I need to follow if I sail into an Irish marina? Are the requirements different if I come from the UK instead of directly from Norway? So I think who you are and where you're from and live is not relevant. Would that be correct, Ray?
No, you can only apply for temporary admission if you're coming from a third country. So that's one part of it. So again, it's you'd have to read the question again.
Norway okay. Finland, so first of all, he tells us that he has a 30-foot sailboat for leisure. All right. It was manufactured in Finland. So and before being imported, it's in Norway. Before being imported into Norway, he is British, or she, but permanently resident in Norway. What formalities does he or she need to follow if they sail into an Irish marina? Are the requirements different if they come from the UK instead of directly from Norway? So basically their boat is in Norway and he or she wants to sail to Ireland.
That might be one I need to follow up with on Brexit queries if he sends an email or she sends an email, because Norway will be different from GB in terms of the EFTA and the third country. So I'm just not sure on the temporary admission requirements around that.
Okay, that's marvelous. Thanks very much indeed. That's the best way to answer something that's unsure. So if someone wants to trailer dinghies moving from Ireland to the UK for a sailing event, what exactly should the sailor have in the way of documentation, and also for UK dinghies coming here for events? Exactly what documentation is needed? You mentioned a carnet there. That's a whole new language for a lot of people. So we could break that down.
If it's dinghied, I'm assuming it's going on the Ro-Ro ferry services. It's trailered as such.
Yeah.
So you'll need to do an export declaration into AEP for the dinghy. So that's the export declaration. So I'll go through the customs piece of it first, and then I'll go back to the ATA carnet. There are two options on it. So you can do an export declaration into revenue systems. You then need to do an import declaration into HMRC systems, and it should be under temporary admission. So again, you need to do that particular procedure because you need to suspend the duties, payment of any duties or VAT. And then there's a export procedure required in the UK to complete that when it's coming back. And then obviously the re-import into Ireland using, again, relevant procedure codes to ensure that you don't pay any duties on the goods coming back. So it's the return goods as such. But it's just ensuring that if you are doing the customs declaration side of things, you know the steps to take. If you want more details, some of those links I gave you on e-customs notifications will be useful. But again, you can email Brexit queries and we can give you some of the procedures and some further guidance on it. Customs reliefs at revenue.ie is also a good option in terms of when the goods are coming back in, what you need to claim. The other option then is getting an ATA carnet. So you can apply for those through Dublin Chamber of Commerce. And it's a form that you complete. I think they're actually electronic now, but you do need to get them stamped. So at export, you need to get them stamped. At import, you need to get them stamped to the particular office. And then again, at export from the UK and back into Ireland. And then if it's the dinghies coming from GB into Ireland, it's obviously the reverse of all that. But there's a lot of formalities now around it.
And can I just ask a question there? Well, first of all, I think what perhaps we'll do for everyone is, because there was quite a lot in that answer as well.
Yeah.
And I'm a fast typist, but I couldn't keep up there. So what I propose we do, guys, is I make that a specific question in the FAQ page with all of the links for those different options. So or carnet, and then where you go. So something I've noticed there, for example, is that you go to the Dublin Chamber of Commerce for the carnet. So could you tell me, are they ready for this? I mean, or is someone going to knock on a very big wooden door with a knob and no one's there to answer? Do they have a new department or anything? You know, you just got to worry about the process of this type of paperwork.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons they did go electronic, that they were preparing for Brexit in terms of expecting. It's obviously not just sailing, every industry, every sector is getting impacted. If you think of musicians to anyone that goes over temporarily for repairs, anything like that, they can use the ATA carnet too. And it's only certain products that are covered on it. So I'm not even 100% sure if the dinghies will be covered on it. I think it is, but again, it's only certain products. And the steps required around, so if it doesn't fall under ATA carnet, there's a charge for it too. And then if you're using the customs declaration process, you may actually have to pay a deposit to HMRC to cover any duties at risk when you're in the UK, and it's held until you complete that export declaration process.
Interesting. Okay, so it can be quite complex.
Yes.
So perhaps the export declaration is actually the easier option.
Yeah, and then again, if it's accompanied, there is requirements there in reliefs. So it may be something similar in HMRC on their requirements. I'm just not sure. We have the reliefs if you're coming in, and if it's accompanied, and there's certain reliefs there. But again, an awareness around documentation you do need for that.
Okay, well, as there's so many people that are obviously interested, and this really does apply to, because we're all not only keen to get back on the water to sail on our own, but keen to start with events, etc. And there's some pretty big events that are very important to our industry. So what I propose, guys and gals, is that I'll try and summarize all of that and put together a dedicated document on it. All right, so I'll liaise with Ryan on that. Obviously you're all welcome to as well individually, but I'll try and organize that for it won't be this week, for next week. All right, now I'm going to skip over from the written ones because Jim has had his hand up for quite a while and he's probably getting tired now with that hand raised there. So let's go over to Jim and he can ask a question, then I'll go back to the chat if that's okay, guys.
Okay, hello Ray, how are you? Thanks for all the information. A friend of mine in the UK comes over on an annual basis for fishing trips, and he wants to bring over his own boat, but he doesn't fancy bringing it over on the ferry and then bringing it back and forth. So he'd like to leave it here for maybe a year or maybe a year or two, because he'll be coming over here 2 or 3 times a year. Can he do that? Or okay, you mentioned something about he gets a bit of written paper to allow him to keep it here, but is there a limit on it, or what does he need to do?
Yeah, it will be temporary admission. So if you're bringing it in, you can bring it in under temporary admission. It's a procedure. Again, it's the act of actually bringing it in, and it's not a formal declaration, but you need evidence about where it's coming from and that if you are stopped. But it's an 18-month, I think, limit on it. You can request an extension, I think. But again, if he's any questions, it's customs reliefs at revenue.ie, just in terms of exactly what he's bringing over. It may be useful to go directly to that unit. So there is a procedure available, and it's 18 months, and I think you can extend it.
Yeah, is it just basically the one form as such, and then he'd produce that at customs?
It's even the act of coming in acts as the temporary admission, but if he was stopped maybe at a marina or en route or something, he might have the relevant documentation to prove it. That's all.
Okay, that's great, Ray. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much indeed. And just going to lower your hand and mute you there, Jim, if that's okay. There you go. Okay, we'll go back to the chat if that's all right, everyone. So Trader Dinghies, John White. That's John White. What of sending life jackets to UK companies for servicing, or sending rod rigging to the UK for scanning? Someone tell me what rod rigging is. I should know, I suppose, shouldn't I?
Again, this is back to customs procedures. Any movement of goods requires customs declarations. So even if it is for repair, I'm not sure what that scanning is, but I presume it's some kind of calibration maybe or something like that. You need to do what's called an outward processing procedure. So again, it's a customs declaration and it's an outward processing procedure. And then you need to ensure that the UK's provider of the service is completing the relevant declarations in HMRC to avoid any duties, or ensure that if you are responsible for completing those, that you know the steps to take. And it could be under an inward processing procedure. And then when it returns, you need to do the export declarations in the UK and a particular procedure code in Ireland coming back in for outward processing goods to avoid any payment of duties. You may be charged duty or VAT on if there's a difference in the value of the good when it comes back after repair.
Thank you very much indeed. One thing I would say, if you register for the cruising conference on Thursday, Union Chandlery are giving free services for life jackets. There you go. You'll get a voucher in the post. Well, the next thing, I've got 20 left. So there you go. There's a good incentive for you. So I hope that's answered your question, John. Brendan Duffy, if buying a second-hand boat in GB, let's say pre-1990, can you avoid paying VAT? We don't say avoid, do we, Ray? So can we avoid paying VAT under the Sail Away Boat Scheme?
Sorry, it broke up at the start of that question. Sorry.
Sorry. If buying a second-hand boat in GB, say pre-1990, can you avoid paying VAT under the Sail Away Boat Scheme?
I don't think so. I think it's because the UK is no longer part of the EU. This is the pre-92 VAT directive. I can clarify that. Definitely, I will clarify it for your FAQs. Just to ensure that's correct. But as far as I'm aware, any products will be subject to customs duties and VAT at import. Okay,
because we do have that.
If they're not zero rated, I can.
Okay, we do have that in our FAQ as being an option, but it does get quite complex once you go into the rabbit warren of working out what it actually means. So
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure the legislation behind that. I think it was 92 anyway. The change, or like anything pre-92 was assumed to have the VAT status as such, but it's changed now. So if you have goods that were in the UK even last year, they've lost their EU VAT status as such. So you would be subject to import VAT for goods that are in the UK. So even if you own goods in the UK and you were bringing goods in, so I think it's the same would apply to that. But I'll follow up and confirm it. Just before you move on, in terms of one of the questions I was answering, I just double check something. If you're bringing in the dinghies for sports purposes, it may fall into that what I was talking about, accompanied personal effects. So you don't need the formal details I was outlining there. So if you're coming from GB into Ireland, you might just need to cover it off on that. There is a link on the website. I think I actually have it on that. I was just double checking it. And it's sports equipment. It mentions skis, hang gliders, golfing equipment. It doesn't mention sailing, but it says canoes and kayaks. So I'm just not sure if dinghies would fall into it. Dinghies be less than 5.5 meters?
Some of them.
Yeah, so if it's less than 5.5, it would fall into that almost oral declaration, so the act of coming in if it's accompanied. So just again, it's clarifying, obviously, if you're coming into Ireland with customs relief team, but if we're going into the UK to clarify their requirements. So some of the dinghies may fall into to less requirements as such, to less formal declarations. So just ensure that you're aware of the type of dinghy you're bringing over. So it really isn't straightforward in any aspects. It will become more kind of natural and accepted, as in it's a learning process, but it is ensuring before you actually depart that you have everything lined up, that you're doing it correctly, because you don't want to get stopped at the port and thing kind of held until the right declarations are done and so forth. So just that's what I'd be aware of.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Perhaps again, that's one that we can add to the document that we need to put together with regards to the carnet, etc., because that is we don't want to slow down events, and access to events, because overseas visitors are important to us. Okay, this is one says here, I am sailing to France from Ireland and wish to overnight in the Scilly Isles. That sounds very nice, doesn't it? What should I do?
Overnight where, sorry?
The Scilly Isles.
Okay. You need to check with HMRC what the requirement is.
Okay. All right. So is that?
It's probably just temporary admission by the act of actually arriving. I don't think there's much more than that. Similar if it was coming here to Achill or someplace or like that.
I think that is in the FAQ page. Not CILIAs aren't mentioned specifically, but it does. They do also do the reciprocal 18-month agreement, but again, just have your proof of ownership on board, I guess, and etc. Right, a simple one. I'm buying a second-hand sports boat from Northern Ireland for $7.5 grand, and I want to bring it by road. Do I pay VAT and duty?
No, that's, I suppose, going back to the start, I didn't go into too much detail on it, was the protocol in Ireland and Northern Ireland means that any products that are in free circulation in Northern Ireland, which this is obviously a second-hand boat from Northern Ireland, there's no customs or declarations required. So you just treat it like a normal, as you would have before December 2020. So there's no customs duties or customs declarations even required.
Brilliant. Now, I was also talking to someone that in customs, as in, you know, the guy that goes out and stops you at the pier, and with regards to that, and he didn't give me a firm answer as to how they're going to prove that the boat was genuinely always in ownership in Northern Ireland, because obviously it's a bit of an open door. But he was saying that there's going to be some kind of procedure to prove that the boat was genuinely in Northern Irish ownership, a little bit like we have to do with cars. I don't know if you know anything about that, right? It's
basically if you're insured to ensure that it was in the UK, or sorry, in Northern Ireland, at 11 p.m. on December 3rd, 2020, if it was purchased, or if it was in, like, that you're ensuring that it was there before the end of transition. So it is those proofs.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm presuming it's a UK flag boat as well. So.
Okay, right. Yep, lovely. Yeah, it's a boat. There's, well, it might have a flag. Yeah. So, Colin, as long as the UK vessel was in the EU, that's someone's actually answered the question to no, that's great. Okay, can Ray outline the difference between GB and Northern Ireland? I think I have that on the FAQ page actually.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, from a goods point of view, Northern Ireland is treated like any other EU member state. So from a services point of view, it's treated like a third country. So there is a difference there. So again, depending what you're getting done, if it's repairs, it's a different type of VAT regime to getting it done in Ireland, because it's services from a third country. But if you're bringing goods in, like that vessel or that boat or any other products from Northern Ireland, there's free movement of goods without customs declarations. But there may be, again, that proofs around the vessels similar to cars, that it was in Northern Ireland prior to the 11 p.m. on the December 31st.
Thank you very much. And
ensuring you have it. It could be an invoice, could be moorings, could be any registrations like that.
Super. Maybe proof of insurance or something like that if there's no receipts.
Yeah, it's just trying to have something that revenue can go back and say, listen, yeah, that's evidence. So it's just, and again, it's thinking ahead. So if you are thinking of buying something, even asking the supplier or the person selling it, do they have anything that they could use, even copies of it, just to have something.
Lovely, thank you very much. I see a 3-year limit on repatriating a boat to the EU. If it was a boat previously owned or first registered in the EU, but then held in UK ownership in past 3 years, can a purchase of it now be considered a repatriation to the EU? So no VAT implications. Of course, that's one of those school puzzles, isn't it, that you have to try and work out. Perhaps John White, would you like to come unmute and present that question, if you don't mind, just so that we understand it?
Sure, no problem. Sorry about that,
John.
It just seems a bit of a grey area. Yeah, it seems to be just this grey area we keep on seeing around. If something has been in the EU, and you're getting 3 years to bring it back into use, say if it's someone who had a boat in the UK, what's to prevent people then buying from the UK in that interim period? And it's essentially just repatriating to the EU. And would it then be considered VAT exempt?
No, the return goods relief, if it's the same person that exported the goods from the EU into the UK in this example, and then re-imports it, you can get relief from customs duties and VAT. But if it's a different person importing it, you only get relief from the customs duty, not VAT.
Okay. Does that answer your question, John?
Sorry, I broke up there. I didn't catch that at all. Apologies.
Oh, sorry.
So he says that if it's the same person exporting and importing, then that holds valid, but otherwise not. Is that it?
Yeah, and there's a number of documentation that's required, so you need that proof of export. Obviously, if it's the same individual, you more than likely will have those evidence. But if it's a different individual that's re-importing it into the EU, you mightn't actually even have the export formalities or proof of even the goods leaving the EU within the 3 years, so you mightn't be able to avail of it.
Sure. Okay. That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, John. Right, I'm going to try and fast track these now because Ray has to put his kids to bed. So when cruising to GB from Ireland for a couple of days only, does customs declaration apply, i.e. the Q flag declaration? Does Ireland and UK still enjoy a common travel area?
Yeah, the common travel area still applies. From a customs point of view, it's that temporary admission again. So by the act of actually going into GB as such, you're under temporary admission. So that's why you need those documentation proofs around the longer stays, the registration details, Vat status of the boat, and so forth. Again, double check out HMRC in terms of going into GB. But if it's a GB boat coming here, the act of actually arriving into Ireland is the temporary admission as such. So it's not a formal customs declaration into a system. But again, you're technically under that 18-month period, and ship stores and all that comes into it too. Then, so if you're coming over into Ireland for the weekend and you have a hull full of drink, it's not realistic to have counted as ship stores and so forth. So again, it's an awareness around it and ensuring that you're not trying to take advantage of anything either.
Understood. Thank you very much. So what is required for the purchase and importation of a boat from Northern Ireland? Value 15,000 sterling. Thank you. Very interesting talk. I think we kind of answered that question already, didn't we? You can buy from Northern Ireland and...
I missed that start to that question. Sorry, I'm just going to switch off my video. Sorry.
That's okay. What is required for the purchase and importation of a boat from Northern Ireland? Value 15,000 sterling.
Yeah, if it's within the free circulation as such again, and if it's a vessel, you might need the proofs that it was in Northern Ireland. But if it's any other product, it's treated as free circulation. So there's no customs declarations required. It's technically coming from another EU member state as such. That's what the protocol guarantees in terms of goods. It's an all-island basis that goods are free to move.
Okay, thank you. So someone here says, following up on the French question, you mentioned sailing directly, but what if you need to stop in the UK unexpectedly due to emergency, weather, etc.? I think we've covered that one in that the temporary admission. Would that be right, Ray? So again, just have
and it's just that obviously that does happen at sea, and weather and all that can come into it too, and anything can happen. So it just covers under the temporary admission. But again, it's ensuring any journeys that you're making, even if you don't intend to go to the UK, that you just have the relevant documentation on hand to avoid any issues.
Okay, lovely. Second-hand yacht from Northern Ireland, VAT paid. If sold to someone in Southern Ireland, is it VAT exempt? We've covered that, haven't we?
Yeah, it's treated the same. It's not VAT exempt as such. It's like it's the same as an EU member state.
Okay, so. Thank you. Why do you need an ATA carnet if you're towing your own boat with your own car?
Again, that could come back to that example of the goods that are covered under the kind of informal temporary admission and of personal goods. So it's ensuring that it does meet those requirements. So if I was driving to the UK with a load of tools in my boot, I would have to declare them. So it's similar enough if you're carrying any goods, even if it's on your person, you may need to declare them. Okay,
so Stuart, we'll clarify that in that document I was talking about with regards to trying to find out with regards to I think Ray mentioned something about that a dinghy might be okay if it's less than 5.5. I don't know how big your dinghy is, Stuart, or the class that you're involved with. Hi, what taxes and duties for importing a new boat from the US which was built in the US? There we go. So is it the same as...
Say that again.
So what taxes and duties for importing a new boat from the USA, which was actually also built in the USA, size 9 meters?
You'd have to check the commodity code of the vessel. There's different commodity codes for motorized or sails, and I'm just not sure the duty rate. Some of them are 0% anyway, but you just need to double check what it is. It's the commodity code that really links back to. The commodity code and country of origin dictates what customs duties is.
On the tariff thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I just checked on that that temporary admission there. I just went down for, sorry, I'm reading the document here now, apologies. Water sports equipment such as canoes, kayaks, sail and rowboats, sails, oars, paddles, surfboards, and then it goes into motorboats as well. They do fall into that category of personal effects that can be imported. So I'm assuming the UK is the same if we're bringing those into the UK, but again, just validated with HMRC that they have this similar criteria. A lot of the stuff they transposed, so I'm imagining it's very similar requirements. So it's just ensuring that.
Fantastic, thank you very much indeed. And do you know if there's a 5.5 limit on that, or we'll look into that afterwards, perhaps?
It just mentions motorboats here. It's only for the canoes and kayaks. It said 5.5 meters. So.
Okay, all right then, fine. Thank you very much. Can we have Ray Ryan? Yes, I will be sharing, if you registered, I have your email address, and I'll be sharing the presentation which has Ray's email on it. All right. What do you need to do? What do we need to move dinghies for events? We've done that one. Yeah. If you don't think we have, I can just see Robe. I'm assuming that says Robert. Then yeah, Robert, please then just shout again. Oh, someone has answered. Someone else. Oh, I've got direct messages. Someone says he can leave it in the EU for 18 months. I think that's someone answering someone else's question earlier. What documentation for proof of ownership does one need abroad? Aboard their yacht to sail into UK ports?
Again, that would be similar to, I suppose, what you normally have now. Your normal registration details is almost mandatory on board anyway. So if you have any proof of registration details on it, if it's hired, obviously the details that show that. That's what we'd look for from a revenue point of view if GB boats are coming in here. Again, it's ensuring that you contact HMRC to see if they have any different requirements, but it's the registration details of the boat, the VAT status of the vessel, any details of moorings or booked or accommodation, anything to show the length of time you're staying, if that is not a permanent import in terms of if it's for leisure, that type of thing. It's just ensuring that you can answer the questions that are going to be asked. Obviously, there's monitoring goes on from a revenue and a HMRC point of view on arrivals on an ongoing basis. So it's just ensuring that you have registration details of the vessel, the owner, you have any kind of VAT status of the vessel, anything in relation to ship stores. If you have a number of, obviously, for going for 2 weeks, the products linked to that and details linked to that. So there is information there. You can go to ship stores if you're coming into Ireland. So it's a bit difficult here. I can only answer from a revenue point of view.
Yeah.
And you need to confirm it from a HMRC point of view.
So the whole proof of VAT element, there's a couple of questions here. So one is there a VAT cutoff date based upon the age of a boat, considering some boats were manufactured prior to the introduction of VAT and indeed the membership of the EU? And I'm going to go through the VAT ones. What criteria is used to establish the basis for the VAT? Is the purchase price, or do revenue decide the value, or similar to motorhomes? Someone else here has added what documentation counts as proof of VAT paid for HMRC or revenue if coming back to Ireland. So people are quite concerned because a lot of people would buy a second-hand boat and wouldn't, it might be quite old. There might be no proof of VAT. Are the documentations you mentioned earlier, as in just proof of ownership, sufficient?
No, you need to prove the VAT status, or you need to have clarification on the VAT status of the vessel. So again, I think that email address there at the end of my slide, I don't have it up there now, maritime@revenue.ie. You can contact them just to see what will be required. Again, I think you mentioned the person that you met on the quay. They'd be the ones that will be, I suppose, stopping you and checking those, and they're the ones that will clarify exactly the status of them. And it's ensuring that there's no VAT outline. And I don't know about that, the older boats in particular. And I think there's pre-72, 73 and the pre-92, there's different VAT legislations there. So even if you want to clarify something, you can send it into Brexit queries and I'll get onto my VAT legislation team. It's just, obviously with the EU or the UK leaving the EU, it's impacted on some of the legislation and the status and the VAT status. So again, we can follow up on those.
Okay, thank you very much.
But in terms of if it's newer boat and that, it's the sales invoices. And again, if you're thinking of buying one, retain that documentation, ensure you have it, ask for it. don't assume anything. Ensure you ask the difficult questions, even to suppliers or even into individuals they're buying off them.
Indeed, and if you've bought one, make sure you keep your documentation, because it probably means your boat's going to be worth more when you go to resell it. You've,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. Please confirm again, a used GB boat which was built in France, if purchased into Ireland, what VAT and duty is payable? I think that person means bring it into Ireland. I think that one's been answered, as in doesn't matter what flag it is. If it's coming from France to Ireland, you're just EU to EU, no problem at all.
If it's a French coming from GB though, then you may be subject to customs duties and VAT. Yeah,
and if you need to stop in GB on your way, then you can get.
That's just a temporary admission piece. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just if it's coming from GB for permanent importation. So if it's coming from that third country, you're into the full customs declarations to import it permanently as such.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I hope that answers your question, Mark. I'm afraid we have quite a lot still. You okay, Ray? To carry on? Yeah, right. Thanks very much indeed. We really appreciate this. It's obviously a lot of questions still bubbling up. Purchase a vessel in France, Holland, or Germany. Oh, is this someone answering, or is this a question? I'll read it out. Purchase vessel in France, Holland, Germany, sailing back to Ireland via UK waters, break down and require major repairs in UK port, involving goods and service in UK. What are the requirements upon return to Ireland? Okay, someone's sort of written in text mode there. So if someone has bought a boat in Europe, all right, they were sailing it back to Ireland and they broke down and they had to pull into the UK to do some repairs. I think we've kind of covered that one. You are allowed to go in. Do you want to?
No, but the repairs changes it. The cost of repairs comes into it then, and it's really something to bear in mind that any repairs done to a boat adds to the value of it as such, or changes the value. It's not the same vessel that left the EU. It's updated, or it's changed, or there's a new part in it, or that type of thing. So again, you may be charged duties on the cost of the repair. So it's again keeping that documentation, keeping that evidence, keeping what you paid, what was done to it. That the temporary admission will allow you to obviously go in and stop, but if it's for repair, it's those requirements too. So it does change it, and HMRC may even have requirements there in terms of what you may need to do almost to get the stuff completed.
So they might just charge you the duty on the value of the repair and increased value on the vessel because of that, if there is any, rather than suddenly, 100,000 euros plus, whatever you're.
Yeah, it's in a similar sense. It's as if your boat broke down here and it could only get fixed in the UK, and you got it taken over on a truck or got it transported over somehow, and the repairs were done there. When it's brought back in, you'll be charged duties on the cost of the repairs as such. So again, it's a similar concept, except it's done in a different format, that you're actually en route yourself and you're putting into a port in the UK and the repairs happen there. But it's a similar concept from a customs point of view, that it's repairs that are done in a third country. Try not break down and go to France to break down.
Yeah, turn around and go back. Okay, if the boat is of pre-VAT vintage, what customs documents do you have to have?
You still need to do, if it's for permanent importation, you still have to do customs declarations and potentially customs duties. But the VAT status, that's something I just need to clarify with the VAT team.
Thank you very much.
Sure on that.
Notice number 8 covers what you have to do when sailing from Ireland to UK.
That's the HMRC notice. Yeah, that's the one I thought I had added onto the slide. It's notice 8 from HMRC. So it might be, you probably have it on your FAQs, but it could be useful to have it up there too.
Okay, I'll just going to make a note of that on my notes here. Notice number 8. Okay, right. Thank you. Arriving into GB and returning to Ireland, what is relevant documentation, as a lot of boats don't have many? For example, original invoice, mooring proof, what? I think we kind of
You're going to have evidence now. It's if you were going to the US and back, you'd have a lot of documentation. Now you have to think of GB as the third country. It's no longer part of the EU. So if you don't have documentation, you're going to have to try and validate it. Again, check with the maritime at revenue.ie in terms of the VAT status of the vessel. It's ensuring that you have them. And again, when you're returning from GB, you're subject to those personal allowances on board as well, similar going through the channels in the airport, if you think of it that way. So it's just that bearing that in mind, so again, having evidence of what was on board when you departed Ireland, in terms of almost the ship stores that you would need going into HMRC, but retain it for Irish so that we know what was on board, so we know what the personal allowance to be coming back in. So it's just ensuring that that if you are stopped by the customs cutter, or there's any questions from a revenue point of view, that you have as many answers as possible at hand or at ease before you make those journeys.
Okay, thank you very much. Someone here has said thank you very much. Good night. But we still have 101 people here. It's okay, and I have 21 messages, so I'm going to keep on going. Where do you find VAT status? Harry, do you mean VAT status or duty?
VAT status, again, that's the maritime at revenue.ie in terms of what evidence you'd require. Some of them are about the older boats. I'm just not sure. Not obviously newer boats, if you have sale invoices, anything that can show where the VAT was paid. It's those type of documents that they may be buried someplace in your house. You may need to just pull them out, make a few copies of them, have them to hand, is what I'd say. That anything, and if you're unsure, even contact Brexit queries, and we'll get you the relevant contacts. It's just ensuring that, to avoid any issues, you don't want issues when you're traveling, especially after the few years we've had. If you're traveling for leisure, you just want to be able to be at your leisure as such, and you have the documentation in your back pocket if needed.
Yeah, definitely. Is it needed to go onto the Irish ships register to go to the UK? Here we are. Yeah, this is a big burden in Ireland. Is a receipt enough to show ownership? So this is slightly different. So this is actually the, are you referring to the small boat register with the department there, Negley? Oh no,
Department
Alan?
of Transport, is it?
Are you referring to the small boat register, Alan?
Yeah, this is, well, I mean, the only register that's available in Ireland, which is the ship's registry.
Yeah.
This is for going to the UK, because I noticed it was mentioned that there'd be a kind of an aspiration to see a registration.
Yes, we'd like to try and get them onto a Zoom, that's for sure. To find out, there certainly were aspirations for there to be one. We haven't, well, certainly Irish Sailing, we haven't seen it yet. Do you know anything about that at all, Ray? Is that a different department?
I think it's Department of Transport, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I'm afraid we can't answer that one at the moment, but do be assured that the Irish Sailing, and Harry particularly, is consistently representing you all with regards to that. All right, and we do have a certificate of identification system with Irish Sailing. We all know that that's not the ship's register, and it may well not be recognised by certain customs overseas, but at least it's some kind of proof that you own the boat. Would that be right, Harry?
I'm glad you clarified that, Gail. Yeah, it's not a statutory register.
No, not at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, don't worry. Look at panic on his face. Where is she going with that? But it's just a piece of paper to prove that you own it. It's useful enough to have, all right? And if you're an Irish Sailing member, it's a bit cheaper as well. Not sure what the difference in price is. Would you, when will we get a small boat register? Okay, covered that. Would having an Irish MMSI on the boat radio be sufficient?
What's an MMSI? Sorry, it's new terminology to me now. Apologies.
There you go, Arthur.
It's that your VHF radio on your boat is registered with the Irish Department of Transport Communication.
Yeah.
So it's your digital VHF radio has an Irish registered number associated.
That's common to all countries, so it doesn't really apply. All countries have their own national identity on MMSI.
But the code is unique to Ireland. It's an Irish code issued by the Irish Department.
It doesn't replace small boat register anyway, for sure. Yeah, unfortunately. Okay, Pat, common travel area rules only apply if traveling, be regular flying or ferry routes. Otherwise, sailing, etc., you require passport, etc. Sailing to GB, you are supposed to notify authorities by phone and fill out forms and post them. Are available online on arrival and before departing. Pat, is that you giving us advice or is that a question? Someone called Pat. Oh, hi, Pat.
Sorry again.
That's
No,
okay.
it was just giving advice from an ex-policeman regarding the travel rules. Lots of people think that you can go to England and back, no problem. That's grand if you're going by regular commercial routes, but if not, I'm sorry, it's back to passports and things like that. That's basically it.
Thank you very much, Pat. Much appreciate that.
No problem.
Someone says, thank you very much, Ray, for such a comprehensive presentation. And someone else here says, are photocopies of documents adequate?
I think they would be, but again, it's to have that original where possible. It's obviously, you don't want to have all originals with you, but I think a copy should suffice. Unless there's doubts about it, you may need to produce the original. I'll verify it, I'll validate it for the FAQs. Just speaking with my own revenue colleagues to ensure that I think for a lot of the documentation, it will be copies. Okay,
lovely. So just make sure that your copy doesn't look like it just came out of a Word document. And moving on. So pending a small boat register, one doesn't need to be currently registered PIN the existing revenue ships register. I think that's probably so. Pending a small boat register, does one need to be currently registered in the existing revenue ships register? Well, there is a small boat register. It's just quite onerous to get onto it. Would that be correct, Harry?
Well, it's a ships register, so there isn't actually a small boat register in Ireland. It's just a ships register, which some people have good experience, and some people have not such good experience. It can be quite cumbersome, particularly with old boats, to get onto it. So I don't know if there is a revenue ships register. I've never heard of that, Ray.
It could be the fact that I think we're the registrar on behalf of the Department of Transport. Maybe that's what it's revenue to act as a registrar on it. I'm not sure though.
Yeah. Someone has actually given clarification here. For clarification purposes for everyone, someone has suggested here that for customs purposes, your registration is actually irrelevant. It's a separate subject. Would that be correct? Yeah, no one's disputing that.
Yeah, no, that would certainly be my understanding of it. Yep.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, same here. Your flag and your registration is irrelevant. Someone here.
Gail, if I could come in there, I don't think
Paddy.
you can register on the ship's register without revenue clearing you for VAT purposes. So it's a sort of the two agencies work hand in hand, and you have to register with one. You have to clear the revenue before you can register with the Department of Marine.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Paddy. So when they do that, I guess the copy receipt isn't really good enough. They would actually look at your receipt and check that your VAT was paid. They'd look at records, would they?
Yes.
Rather than just seeing the piece of paper. Okay.
Yeah.
Righty-ho. So MMSI number does not indicate.
What?
Oh, I'm just going to mute Josephine Brown there. All right. MMSI number does not indicate the ship's flag registry. It just indicates where the ship's station license is granted. I sail a Dutch registered yacht with an Irish MMSI. Oh, that's interesting to know. Thank you very much, Colin. Someone else here says, and it's the Department of Transport register, not revenue. Yeah, we clarified that. Thank you very much. Some great chat here. And someone says, thank you. It's complex. Big exclamation mark. Appreciate the presentation explanations. I look forward to the FAQ. Yeah, thanks guys. Yeah. And someone else says, thanks very much for interesting and sobering presentation. Big smiley face with a nose. And thank you for all the great presentations. And that's it. Wow. Okay, I'm going to screen share and show everyone this for the moment, and maybe Ray can help us here. Can you see it? No. What can you see? Can you see the TARIC page? Oh,
yeah,
no.
Taxation and Customs Union.
Yeah.
TARIC,
okay.
measure information. Yeah.
So this is the TARIC page. I'm going to arrow back because it's when you go in. All right, I'm just arrowing back for you all. When you go in, you see this. hang on. And as you can see, you come to this, all right? And as you can see, is when you Google Tariq, you'll see this and go, I don't know what my code is. And then you might do like I did and put in the word boat and nothing came up. And then you put in the word vessel with, oh, there's something there with vessel. So I scrolled down and found which section had vessel by using the search up at the top. And then I ended up in, there we go. Then I searched, yeah, there we go. And then I found the word, 1 second. It took me a while and then discovered the goods code, okay, by clicking on the relevant element in the previous page. So got to here and I just had to read down, oh, yachts and other vessels for sport. So that's me, all right. So then I clicked on that and I got this page and then it went down even more numbers, inflatable, other. So I clicked on other and got even more breakdown and went, so I want to go seagoing. All right, so this one here. And I now have my goods code of origin, not United Emirates, United Kingdom, retrieve measures. All right, and then I got my tariff measure information. I don't really know what you do after that. Perhaps you could help me there, Ray. Do I click on one of these numbers here, do I?
My screen is a bit behind.
Oh, sorry.
Just give me a second, just catching up. It just dropped off there a second ago. So
for those that are interested, I just thought it might help them to see that you do get there in the end, okay?
Yeah. So that code 89, the one that's in blue, 89039110. So it's a 00 added to that for the full 10-digit code. So there is a prohibition on it. That's the first point there. So you need to check to see what that is. There again, it could be just need an exemption code.
Do I click there? Do I click on that number there to see if it's?
No. Well, that brings you into regulation, so I wouldn't click on it just yet. That's an EU regulation. It'll bring you into, and it lists out the requirements.
It's just that it doesn't
so
actually.
If you were doing a customs declaration.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you were doing the customs declaration, you put in this, and you would need that additional code 4118 or 4117. So it just needs, and if you click on that show conditions there under the 4117 additional code, goods with hail on, sorry, scroll down a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should bring up something. The third country duty rate down the end is 0%, and it's United Kingdom is the preferential duty 0%. So on some of the commodity codes, you'll see third country duty rate of a 5%, 10%, 2.7%, depending on what the customs duty rate is. And then UK, if it's UK origin, will have the 0%. And you just claim that preference. So that's what that means. So you could have, so that one, no matter where it's coming from, is 0% customs duty.
All right.
So that there's a license number required there, which is issued by the Commission. So an L100.
Right, yeah. There you go, guys. So I just thought you'd like me to show you that.
That's why the commodity codes are key to it. And if you do have any questions around the commodity codes, again, you can send them into Brexit queries. But there's a classification that deals with classifying the goods and the requirements. And again, if you are buying something from a UK supplier, just double check the commodity code they're giving you, just to make sure you're happy enough that it does match with what you're buying.
Okay. So
it might give you a nice 0% one, but.
Could I clarify this then, that I'm buying a sailboat that's seagoing, that has, I don't know what a halon is. Does anyone else know? A halon and...
Halon gas.
Yeah, it's gas. They're linked to ozone depleting. Yeah.
So would that
probably
be
enough. What would happen there is you'd enter in the 4999. It's other. So you'd have... If you fall under the other ones, there's restrictions. If you fall under the first one, I don't know what the regulation is now, 4118, depending on the vessel itself, what it is. Again, it's certain requirements around it, and that's why it isn't straightforward in terms of customs declarations. That you just need to be aware of that. Even if it's we had issues with motor parts that actually got flagged for a Department of Agriculture check because they had parts of it were made with nutshells, so an exhaust pipe, so they fell under the Department of Agriculture. So it's just an awareness around that there actually may be some vessels or some boats or some commodity codes within that Chapter 89 that might fall under, and you'll see on it import control for organic products or something like that. So it just don't assume anything. If you're going to buy something in the UK, ask them for commodity code maybe even before you purchase it to see what charges may apply. So if you were buying a sailboat that wasn't seagoing and they gave you that code, I don't know what the other option is under that 8903, but there might be a duty charge on it. So the supplier may be giving you a code that seems 0%, but then revenue may come back at the point of importation or in a post-clearance check or at an audit point of view, and follow up and say that's an incorrect code and you may be subject to duties. So again, from a business point of view, ensuring that you're taking responsibility as an importer.
Fantastic. Well, I'll just stop sharing there. Well, I think someone has said, many thanks for introducing us to the minefield. Great work, everyone. So really, again, thank you so much. I'm sure there's going to be more questions that are going to appear in my inbox over the weekend, and we do our very best to try and help you all and everyone else that's sailing and motorboating to stay active and be able to explore, because that's what we all love to do. Is there any other last questions that anyone has? You're all good. Okay. So
if Norman Keane wants to get in there.
Wants to get in? I don't see anything there.
He has his finger up.
Oh, right. Okay. I can't see. I can only see 20 of you. So, hey, yeah, work away there, Norman. Thank you.
Unmute.
Unmuted, yes. Couple of things. Paddy McGlade mentioned that you want to make sure you're okay with the revenue before you go for registration. Actually, registration, we did it last year or the year before. Irish registration is now done by the revenue. So it really is one process. And my advice to anybody who wants full Part 1 Irish registry, the only kind you can have, is sit down face to face with the registrar with the best documentation you have. Our boat was built in 1989. We do have a VAT document, but give them the best paper trail you have, sit down across the desk, lay it down one by one in front of them in person, and you won't have a problem. I have Ray, you said at one point that the same rules apply to second-hand goods as to new ones. There was a report in the Float magazine several months ago that second-hand boats being imported from the UK that were of non-UK origin originally, but second-hand bought in the UK, brought into Ireland, were subject to 10% import duty. I'm getting the impression that's not the case, that it's more like maybe 2.7 in that order of magnitude. Is that the case?
It depends on the commodity code.
Right. So yes. Sorry. Yes. And yes, it boils down to that. And I've been through the tariff codes, and I can't find anything like 10%. So this is really.
Yeah, 10% sticks out as a motor vehicle. Actually, that's one that I'd be familiar with for a 10% duty rate. So yes. I'm not sure if the motor boats. I checked a few of them too, and a good few were actually 0%. But I didn't see anything higher than I think 2.7 was. I only scanned now a few of them, but
that was my experience. I'm in the position of. I mean, I wrote guidance for the Irish Cruising Club on this, and this business of importing. I mean, we bought a second-hand boat in Scotland in 2014 and brought her over. And we have the VAT documentation, and she's now Irish registered, and she has union goods status because she was here on the 31st of December. And that's as I understand it. But I was concerned by this report of 10%, and I thought, that's a bit ridiculous. I can't find anything on the revenue website that supports that. And what you've said tonight supports my view.
It could be under Chapter 89 someplace, but I didn't find it. And the 10% just jumps out from a motor vehicle's point of view, like so. Yeah,
maybe that's where it came from. It's a misunderstanding on the part of whoever wrote the article in a float.
Yeah, that's good news. So we'll have to make sure that we the FAQ page. It would be nice to turn that into an article. But I think it would end up ridiculously long and you'd be round in circles. I think it's crisper and clearer to keep it as FAQ because of, as let's call it the minefield or the rabbit warren, but there are so many different permutations, if that's the right word. So thanks a million for that, Norman. It's reassuring to know that an old vessel can get its license